How does a man react when his son-in-law brings two extra adults to move into his house like it is already theirs? Why did I smile when he smirked in my driveway, with a moving truck behind him and my neighbors watching? Can one welcome note turn a whole family quiet in seconds? My name is Graham Holt. I am 58 years old, and I live in the same house I bought almost 20 years ago. It is not a big house, but it is solid. It has a small front yard, a clean porch, and a garage that still smells like sawdust when the weather is warm. I like that smell. I like simple things. I wake up early, make coffee, and watch the light move across the kitchen floor. My life is quiet on purpose. People often mistake quiet for empty. They think a calm man has no edge. They think he will always give way. I learned a long time ago that raising my voice never fixed a problem. It only made the wrong people feel important. So I keep my tone even. I listen. I take my time. That is how I have lived since my wife left years ago and the house became just mine and my daughter's. My daughter, Lena, is 31 now. She is bright and kind, but she carries stress in her shoulders like a heavy bag. She married Bryce 2 years ago. Bryce is 34 and knows how to look confident in any room. He shakes hands like he is closing a deal. He laughs at the right time. He says the right words in front of the right people. When I first met him, I thought he was simply polished. I did not understand that he used polish like a shield and a tool. In the beginning, I tried to be welcoming. I wanted Lena to feel safe bringing him into our family. I invited them over for dinners. I helped them fix small things in their apartment. I brought my old ladder and replaced a kitchen light. I did not ask for anything back. I never wanted a scorecard between me and my child. I thought that was what a father did. Over time, I noticed a pattern. Bryce did not ask for help the way Lena did. Lena would ask with care. Bryce would present help as a normal duty. If Lena asked, she would say she was sorry to trouble me. If Bryce asked, he would speak as if the plan was already agreed. He did not demand. He simply acted like my agreement was automatic. At first, I told myself it was only his style. Some people move through life like that. That week, Lena called me on a Tuesday evening. I was in my kitchen, rinsing a mug. The dish soap smelled like lemon, and the radio was low. Lena said she and Bryce needed to come over to talk. Her voice was gentle, but I heard the tightness behind it. I told her I was home and I could make tea. They arrived just after 7. Lena came in first and looked around like she was checking for danger in a familiar room. Bryce followed with his usual easy smile. He stepped into my kitchen like he belonged there. He looked at the counters, the table, the coat hooks by the back door. He nodded in a way that felt like he was reviewing a space, not visiting a home. Lena sat at the table. Bryce stayed standing for a moment. I poured tea, set out 2 cups, and sat across from Lena. Bryce took the chair beside her. Lena started explaining that their rent was going up and that their building was changing owners. She said it felt unstable. She said they needed a plan. Bryce then took over, speaking smoothly about timing and convenience. He said they could stay with me for a short period, just until things settled. He said it would be easier for everyone. I asked what short period meant. Bryce said he did not want to put a hard number on it because plans can shift. He said it was better to be flexible. Lena watched her hands as he spoke. She kept rubbing her thumb over her ring like she was trying to calm herself. Bryce looked at me the whole time. He kept his expression friendly, but his eyes were measuring. I said I needed to think about it. I said I loved Lena and wanted her safe, but my home was my home. I said I had routines and work, and I needed clear limits. Bryce nodded like he understood, but then he said it would be fine because they were family. He said family does not count days. He said it was not like strangers. He said the extra space in my house should not sit unused when people needed it. That was the first time I felt the shift. It was not a loud moment, it was a quiet one. He had taken my private life and called it unused. He said it like a simple fact. My kitchen suddenly felt smaller. The hum of the refrigerator felt louder. I kept my face calm and told him I would still need to think about it. Bryce then suggested we all go out to eat that weekend. He said it would be good to talk in a neutral place and keep things light. Lena agreed quickly. I could see relief in her face, like she wanted a smooth path with no sharp corners. I agreed too, because I wanted to see how Bryce acted when the room had other people in it. On Saturday, we met at a family restaurant on the edge of town. It had brown booths, laminated menus, and a steady noise of plates and soft music. We sat in a booth near the window. Lena sat beside Bryce. I sat across from them. Bryce greeted the server with a strong voice and a warm smile. He asked about specials and acted like he knew the place well. He did not, but he acted like he did. The conversation started normal. Work, weather, a small story about a neighbor's dog. Then Bryce shifted again, very gently. He started talking about how the world was changing and how younger couples needed support. He said older generations had advantages that made life easier. He said the best families shared resources. He said a home should be a hub, not a fortress. He kept his tone light. He smiled. He made it sound like a friendly idea, but he said it while looking at me, waiting for my reaction. I asked what that meant in practice. Bryce said it meant not making things difficult. He said it meant letting Lena feel like she could always come home. He said I would not really notice them in the house because they would be busy. He said his parents might also visit sometimes, but it would not be a big deal. He said it like an extra detail that did not matter. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. That last part hit me harder than I expected. He did not say his parents might visit for a weekend. He said it in a way that sounded open-ended. I looked at Lena. She looked back for a second, then looked down again. Her silence was an answer, even if she did not know it. I said I needed clarity. I said visits were one thing, but living arrangements were another. Bryce nodded and said I was thinking too sharply about it. He said it was all the same idea, just family being together. He said the real problem in families was when people counted favors. He said that made relationships cold. He said he did not want Lena to feel like a guest in her father's home. The server returned with food, and the conversation turned lighter again. Bryce joked. Lena smiled in a small way. I ate slowly, listening more than speaking. I watched Bryce's hands when he talked. I watched how he timed his smile. He was skilled. He knew how to steer without gripping the wheel. After dinner, we stood in the parking lot near our cars. The air was cool. The lights above us buzzed softly. Bryce clapped my shoulder in a friendly way that felt practiced. He said he appreciated my support. He said they would figure out details soon. He said it like the decision was already done, and I was simply catching up to it. Lena hugged me and whispered that she loved me. I told her I loved her too. I meant it. On Monday, I came home from the grocery store and found Lena's car in my driveway. She was on my porch with Bryce. They were waiting for me. Bryce had a folder under his arm. He said they had been thinking a lot and they wanted to move quickly. He said their lease situation had become urgent. He said they needed to start bringing things over soon. I told them I had not agreed yet. Bryce's smile tightened for half a second, then returned. He said he understood. He said he just wanted to prepare. He said preparing was not the same as moving in. He said it was only practical. Lena stood behind him, her face tense, like she wanted to disappear into the porch railing. I invited them inside. We stood in the living room. Bryce glanced toward the hallway, toward the guest room door. He asked which room would be best for them. I said I was not ready to assign rooms because we had not agreed on anything. Bryce said I was making it sound like a contract. He said it was only a short stay. He said I should trust family. That night after they left, I walked through my house slowly. I noticed the small things that made it mine. The worn spot on the carpet where I always stood when I watered the plants. The shelf in the hallway where Lena's school photos still sat. The small dent on the kitchen table from a project Lena did as a teen. This house held my life. It held my work, my care, my history. The idea of strangers treating it like a temporary lodging made my stomach turn, but I did not let that feeling spill into anger. I kept it quiet. Quiet feelings are still real. On Friday, I woke up to the sound of a truck far down the street. At first, I thought it was a delivery. Then I heard it again, closer, with a deeper rumble. I looked out my front window and saw a moving truck turning onto my street. My street is usually calm. It is not the kind of street where big trucks come often. The truck moved slowly, like it was searching for a specific house. Then it stopped in front of mine. I stepped onto my porch. The morning air was cold and clean. The sky was pale. The truck's engine idled, vibrating the quiet street. I saw Lena's car behind it. Bryce got out of the passenger side. He looked up at me and smiled like we were sharing a joke. Then he opened the back of the truck. Two older people climbed down carefully. I recognized them from the wedding and a few family gatherings. Ron Keene and Gail Keene, Bryce's parents. They both wore neat clothes like they were going to a social event, not moving into someone else's home. Ron looked around my yard with an approving nod. Gail held a small box close to her chest like it was something precious. A mover stepped down behind them and waited for direction. I stayed on the porch and kept my voice even. I asked what was happening. Bryce said his parents were coming too, just for a while, because their situation had changed. He said it would be easier if everyone stayed together. He said it like he was telling me the weather. Ron walked toward my steps and smiled. He said it was good to see me. He said he was glad we could all be under one roof. Gail said she brought a few kitchen items that would help. I told them I had not agreed to anyone moving in, including Bryce and Lena. The mover froze, one hand on a dolly handle, eyes shifting between us. Ron's smile stayed, but it hardened around the edges. Gail's expression turned cautious. Bryce did not look surprised. He looked entertained. He looked like he had expected this moment and was waiting to see how I would perform. Lena got out of her car and walked up the driveway. She looked at me with a pleading face. She said they just needed a place. She said it would only be temporary. She said Bryce had already told his parents it was fine. Her words landed on me like weight. She was not asking me, she was reporting what had already been promised. My neighbor, Mara Voss, stepped out to get her mail. She paused at the curb, pretending to check envelopes while watching the scene. Across the street, a curtain moved in a window. I felt eyes on my porch. I felt the pressure Bryce wanted. He wanted witnesses. He wanted me to choose between my boundary and my image. Bryce stood by the open truck and gestured toward the boxes. He said the movers were here and the schedule was tight. He said it would be awkward to send everyone away. He said we could talk inside once the heavy items were in. He kept smiling. He looked at Ron and Gail like he had already won. Ron nodded and stepped onto my first porch step as if the house was welcoming him on its own. I did not raise my voice. I did not step back either. I looked at the truck. I looked at the boxes. I looked at my front door. Then I looked at Bryce. His smile stayed in place, but his eyes were sharp. He expected me to fold. He expected me to be the quiet man who always makes space. I took a slow breath, felt the cold air fill my lungs, and I said I needed everyone to stop moving for 1 minute. The mover stopped fully. Ron paused on the step. Gail clutched her box tighter. Lena stood still in the driveway. Mara did not move at the curb. Bryce's smile widened, like he thought I was finally giving in. He looked pleased with himself. And in that moment, with my porch full of pressure and my street full of watching eyes, I understood something very clearly. They did not come to ask. They came to take. The truth is, my house did not become important to them overnight. It became important the moment they realized it could solve their problems without costing them much. After my wife left, it was just me and Lena. She was still in school then. I worked regular hours, came home, cooked, helped with homework, and fixed what broke. I learned to keep everything steady. I did not talk much about my own stress. I did not want Lena to feel like she had to carry it too. That is how I became the calm one. I kept the lights on, I kept the roof solid, I kept promises. People around me got used to that. They got used to the idea that I would always absorb trouble quietly. When Lena got older, she wanted independence fast. She moved out, started work, and built her own life. I was proud of her. I never tried to control her choices. I only asked her to stay honest with herself. That was my only rule. She could always tell me the truth, even if it was uncomfortable. Then she met Bryce. At first, Bryce looked like the kind of man who could help her. He had a clean car, nice shirts, and strong confidence. He talked about goals, planning, and the future. He told me he cared about Lena. He said he respected me as her father. He shook my hand firmly and looked me in the eyes. I wanted to believe him. In the early months, he was on his best behavior. He brought small gifts when he visited. He offered to help clean up after dinner. He asked about my work. He acted interested. But even then, I noticed something. When Lena spoke, Bryce often finished her sentences. He did it with a smile, like it was cute. Lena laughed it off. She said he was just excited. I told myself the same thing. Later, the excitement turned into control. It happened slowly. It was never one big argument. It was hundreds of small moments. When they planned their wedding, Lena asked me to help with a few costs. She said it would mean a lot to her. I said yes, because I wanted her to have a joyful day. Bryce thanked me, but his thanks felt like a receipt. He acted like I was paying for the privilege of being included. At one meeting with vendors, I gave a simple opinion about timing and budget. Bryce listened, then redirected the whole plan without acknowledging what I said. He spoke like my input was a suggestion from someone who did not understand modern life. Lena stayed quiet, watching him lead. She looked tired even then, but she still leaned toward him. After the wedding, they moved into an apartment across town. It was not far, but it was far enough that Lena stopped dropping by randomly. She started scheduling visits like appointments. When she did come, she often came with Bryce. And when Bryce came, the temperature in my home changed. He treated my routines like a funny old habit. He said I lived like a man who had given up on enjoyment. He said I should upgrade my furniture, my kitchen, my clothes. He said it like advice, but it carried a message. He was placing himself above me without saying it openly. Lena still called me when she needed help. She always had. A faucet leak, a car issue, a strange sound from a heater. I never complained. I drove over, fixed what I could, and went home. But Bryce started making these requests feel like my role. He would send a message that said Lena mentioned the sink was acting up and it would be great if I could handle it this weekend. He rarely asked what time worked for me. He set the time and expected me to appear. I remember one Saturday I had planned to rest. My back was sore from yard work. I wanted one quiet day. Bryce messaged again, saying the closet door was stuck and it was making the apartment feel cramped. He said it was hard for Lena to relax with these issues. He said he had a busy week and could not get to it. He did not say please. He did not say thank you in advance. He just framed it as a problem I should remove. I went anyway, not because he deserved it, but because Lena lived there too. The apartment was small and crowded. Boxes were stacked in corners. It did not look like a settled home. It looked like a place people were still waiting to leave. While I worked, Bryce stood behind me giving suggestions. He said I should do it a different way. He said he had watched videos online. He said this should be easy for me since I had nothing else going on. I kept my face calm. I fixed the door. I left without arguing. After that, I started hearing a new tone in the family. Ron and Gail appeared more often. They acted polite, but they carried themselves like they were evaluating me. Gail looked around my home and commented on space. Ron asked what I planned to do with the guest room long term, like it was a resource that needed a purpose beyond my choice. At a community event in the church hall, Gail spoke to a group of women and kept circling back to the idea that families should live close and share everything. She said it was sad when older parents sat alone in big houses. She said it was better to bring generations together. People nodded, and I could feel the social pressure building around me like fog. Lena stood beside Bryce with a careful smile, as if she was trying to keep everyone happy at once. Later, Ron spoke to me near the coffee table in the hall. He asked about my mortgage, my bills, and my retirement in a casual tone. He said he was just making conversation, but his questions had direction. He wanted to know what I had, what I owed, and what I might be afraid of losing. Around the same time, Bryce began speaking more openly about my house as if it was part of their future plan. He mentioned how close it was to good schools and how the backyard would be great if they had children. He said it would be a shame if the space was wasted. He said the best homes should be full. I listened. I nodded. I did not argue, but I started noticing how often he used the same words. Wasted, full, family, support, hub. He repeated these like a script. The more he repeated them, the more I understood he was not sharing thoughts. He was shaping a narrative. Then came the money talk. It started small. Bryce said the economy was rough. He said rent was unfair. He said jobs were unstable. He said it was hard to plan for the future when costs kept rising. I agreed that life was expensive. I said everyone felt it. He then said something that sat in my chest for days. He said older people had advantages because they bought homes before everything got so costly. He said it was easier for my generation. He said it was only fair for families to balance things now. He did not say he wanted my house. He did not say it directly. He did not need to. He spoke like the conclusion was obvious. He spoke like I should feel responsible for solving his problem. Lena looked uncomfortable when he said it. She tried to soften it by saying they just needed time to save and stabilize. She said it would be temporary. She said she did not want to be a burden. Bryce did not like that word. He said she was not a burden. He then added that I should not treat them like they were asking for charity. He said they were building a family and I should want to be part of it. He said I should not be the kind of father who makes his own child feel unwanted. That was one of his strongest tools. He used Lena's emotions as leverage. If I pushed back, it could look like I was rejecting her. He knew that. He used it carefully. One evening, Lena came to my kitchen alone. She looked exhausted. She said Bryce was stressed about work and money. She said his parents were also having problems with their living situation. She did not give details. She just said it was complicated. I asked her what she wanted. She said she wanted peace. She said she wanted everyone to stop fighting before it started. I told her that peace without boundaries is not peace. It is only silence. I said it gently because she looked like she might break if I pushed too hard. She nodded but did not answer. She went quiet the way she did when she was a teenager and felt trapped between two sides. A few days later, Bryce called me. He said he wanted to speak man to man. He said he respected me, but he also said he needed me to understand reality. He said Lena needed stability and he needed a home base. He said their apartment was not working. He said moving in with me would help everyone. I asked him why it had to be my house. He said it was the obvious solution. He said I lived alone and had space. He said it made no sense for a house like mine to be quiet when family needed it. Then he said the part that changed how I saw him. He said I should think about the future and how relationships work. He said people remember who supported them. He said Lena was building her adult life now, and she would not forget who stood in the way. He said he did not want conflict, but he also did not want me to act like I had all the power. He made it sound calm. He made it sound reasonable. But the meaning was clear. He was warning me. He was telling me I could be pushed out of my own child's life if I did not cooperate. I did not react the way he wanted. I told him I understood what he was saying. I told him I needed time to consider what was best for my home and my life. He went quiet for a moment, then said he hoped I would make the right choice. After that call, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The tea in my mug went cold. I stared at the wood grain and thought about how quickly people stop seeing you as a person when they want something from you. I had been steady for years. I had been calm for years. I had tried to avoid conflict for years. And somewhere along the way, Bryce decided my calm meant he could steer me. By the time that moving truck showed up on my street, this was not a surprise attack. It was the end of a long buildup. It was the moment they tried to turn their story into my reality in front of witnesses so I would feel forced to accept it. The mover stood still with his hands on the dolly. Ron paused on my step. Gail held her box like she did not know whether to put it down or keep holding it forever. Lena looked at me with wide eyes. Bryce kept smiling, like he was watching a play he had already seen. I stayed calm and told everyone I needed 1 minute of quiet. I said we could not move anything into my home until we had a clear agreement. I did not say it like a threat. I said it like a rule that already existed. Bryce answered in a soft tone, saying we could talk inside and sort it out while the movers worked. He made it sound reasonable. He made it sound like I was the one slowing down something normal. Ron added that the truck was here and the neighbors were watching, so we should not make it awkward. That was the point. They wanted the awkwardness. They wanted me to feel it in my skin. They wanted me to choose the path that made the street quiet again, even if it cost me my home. I told them we would talk right there, on the porch, before any box moved. I said it was my house, and that was how it would be. I saw Bryce's smile tighten again, just for a moment. He hid it quickly. Lena stepped closer and tried to soften the moment. She said they did not mean to surprise me. She said they thought it would be easier if they just brought a few things and showed it could work. Her voice was careful, like she was trying not to break anything. I asked Lena one direct question. I asked if she had told Bryce he could promise my house to other people. She looked down and said she did not want anyone to fight. She said she thought we would talk and figure it out together. She did not answer the question, and that was also an answer. Ron spoke next, in the tone of a man who thinks he is being generous. He said families help each other. He said he and Gail were not asking for much, just a room and some stability. He said he assumed I would be glad to have more people around since I lived alone. I told him my home was not empty space waiting for strangers to fill it. I said I liked my quiet. I said I was not lonely. I said I was careful with my health and my routine, and I did not share my home without clear limits. Gail tried a different approach. She said she understood, and she said she did not want to be a problem. Then she added that moving was already arranged and their place was already being cleared. She said they did not have another option. Bryce watched me the whole time. He did not look worried. He looked confident, like he believed I would fold as soon as I felt responsible for their comfort. I looked at the mover again and spoke directly to him. I said no one had permission to bring anything inside my home today. I said if anyone tried, it would not be a simple situation. I kept my voice steady. The mover nodded, grateful to have clear instructions. Bryce stepped forward and said we were making this bigger than it needed to be. He said he was trying to protect Lena from stress. He said it was not fair to push back when they were already struggling. I said I understood they were stressed. I said stress does not give someone the right to take over another person's home. I said if they wanted a plan, we could talk later that day at a table, with calm minds and clear terms. I said the truck could leave now and come back only if we had agreement. Ron's face changed. He stopped smiling completely. He said I was being stubborn. He said he did not expect this from a father. Gail stared at me like she was trying to see if I was serious. Lena's eyes filled, and that hurt. But I did not move. I did not soften my boundary just because my child was upset. I had done that too many times in smaller ways, and it only invited bigger pressure later. Mara, my neighbor, finally walked up the curb a few steps and asked in a quiet voice if everything was all right. She did not ask like she wanted drama. She asked like a person who did not like what she was seeing. I told her we were fine and thanked her for checking. I kept it simple. Bryce looked at her, then back at me, and his smile returned in a sharper form. He knew witnesses can be used. He also knew witnesses can be dangerous when the story does not go your way. After a long pause, Bryce told Ron and Gail to step back to the truck. He said they would handle it later. Ron muttered something under his breath, but he turned and walked away. Gail followed, holding her box, moving carefully like the ground had changed under her feet. Lena stayed. She came up the porch steps and said she did not want this to become a family break. She asked me to please talk inside. I told her we could talk, but the truck was leaving first. I said that was my line. She looked at Bryce like she wanted him to agree, but he shrugged slightly like he was doing me a favor. He told the movers to close the truck for now. The engine started again. The truck pulled away slowly. Ron and Gail sat in the cab with stiff faces. When the truck disappeared around the corner, the street felt quiet again. Mara went back to her mail. Curtains stopped moving in windows. But the quiet did not feel like relief. It felt like a warning. They had tried the first push and learned I would not move easily. That meant the next push would not be so public. It would be quieter and more strategic. Inside my living room, Lena sat on the edge of the couch like she was afraid to sit too fully. Bryce took the chair across from her. He looked relaxed again, like the truck leaving did not matter. He said we could still make the move happen, just with better timing. He said we should focus on solutions. I told them I needed clear answers. I asked where they would stay, for how long, and what rules would exist. Bryce said rules made things tense. He said he did not want Lena living under rules. He said she was an adult. I said adults respect rules when the home is not theirs. I said I would not host an open-ended situation. I said if I ever agreed to a short stay, it would have a clear end date and clear boundaries. Bryce leaned back and said I was acting like a manager, not a father. He said Lena needed support, not conditions. Lena stared at her hands again. I kept my tone even and told Bryce something simple. I told him that if he wanted to live like a man with full control, he should pay for his own roof. I said it without anger. I said it like a fact. For a moment, Bryce looked surprised. Not hurt, not sad, just surprised that I spoke plainly. Then he smiled again and said he respected honesty. He said he hoped I would not regret making things hard. After they left, I walked through my house again, but this time I looked at it like someone else might look at it. I looked at doors, locks, windows, and the mailbox. I looked at the small side gate that led to my backyard. I realized something that made my stomach tighten. I had treated this as a family conversation. Bryce treated it as a campaign. The next morning, I found a stack of mail in my mailbox that was not mine. It had my address, but the names were new. Ron Keene, Gail Keene. One envelope had Lena's name with a slightly different form of it, like someone had tried to match records. It was not a random mistake. It was too clean, too early, too direct. I did not throw the mail away. I did not write angry notes. I set it on my kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. I thought about how people establish a claim. They do it with small proofs, mail, deliveries, accounts, anything that makes their presence look normal on paper. That afternoon, I went to the bank branch where I have handled my accounts for years. I did not go in angry. I went in focused. I asked to speak with someone about address records and authorization. I kept my language careful. I said I wanted to confirm that no one could attach new names to my address through any bank process. The banker checked the system. She frowned slightly and asked me to wait. She returned with a supervisor. They told me there had been a recent inquiry connected to my address, not a completed change, but a request connected to mailing and proof of residence. They did not accuse anyone. They simply said it was unusual and they wanted to confirm my intentions. In that moment, something inside me shifted from discomfort to clarity. They were not only pressuring me in conversation, they were building a paper trail behind my back. I thanked the staff and asked what steps I could take to protect my information. They gave me the formal process, and I followed it. I asked for notes to be placed on my file. I asked what would be required for any future change. I listened carefully and repeated the key points back to them to be sure I understood. When I left the bank, I sat in my car and did not start the engine right away. I watched people walk in and out of the building with normal lives. I realized that for Bryce, my calm nature was not a sign of peace. It was a weakness he believed he could use. He believed I would not want conflict so badly that I would let him rewrite my life. That is when I decided I would stop trying to be understood. I would be documented. That evening, I went into my home office. It is a small room with a desk, a lamp, and an old filing cabinet. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a small lockbox I had not touched in years. Inside were my home records and personal papers I keep safe. I did not spread them out like a dramatic scene. I simply checked what I needed to check, then put everything back neatly. Next, I took a clean folder and labeled it with a simple date and a simple word. I started placing copies of things inside, the unusual mail, a note of the bank visit with the time and the name of the supervisor, a short written timeline of the moving truck incident while my memory was fresh, I also started saving messages. I did not write speeches. I did not argue in text. I simply saved what they sent exactly as it was. I created a backup on a small drive and stored it away. It was not about revenge. It was about reality. Reality needs proof when people are willing to twist stories. Later that night, I called Priya Sato. She is a lawyer I have known through community work for years. She is calm, sharp, and practical. I told her I needed advice about housing boundaries and unwanted residency attempts. I did not exaggerate. I did not add emotion. I gave her dates, events, and patterns. Priya listened. She asked a few short questions. Then she told me to keep doing exactly what I was doing. She told me to keep records, stay calm, and stop having important conversations without structure. She said there were clean, lawful ways to end this, but I had to stay patient. I told her I could do patient. I have done patient my whole life. When I hung up, I walked back into my kitchen and looked at the pile of mail again. I felt tired, but my mind was steady. The picture was clear now. They were not asking for shelter, they were testing ownership. The next few days felt strange, like living in my own home while someone else tried to claim it through little steps. Nothing dramatic happened at first. That was the point. When people want to take something, they often start with quiet moves that look normal to outsiders. I kept my routines the same. I still woke up early. I still made coffee. I still watered my plants and checked the weather before work. But now I watch details with a different kind of attention. More mail arrived with names that were not mine. It was not a lot, but it was steady enough to feel intentional. I placed each piece in a folder. I wrote the date on a small note and clipped it to the envelope. I did not open anything. I did not try to solve it with guesses. I simply saved proof that it was happening. Lena called me twice that week. Her voice sounded tired both times. She said Bryce's parents were upset. She said Ron felt disrespected. She said Gail felt embarrassed. Lena said she did not want this to split the family. I told her I understood. I told her I also did not want to split. I told her my boundary was not personal. I said my house was not a group decision. I said it was my responsibility, and I had to protect it. Lena went quiet. Then she said Bryce believed I was trying to control her life. That sentence told me more than she meant it to. Bryce had turned my boundary into a story where I was the problem. That story would spread because it sounded simple: a strict father, a stubborn older man, a young couple struggling. It was easy for people to pick sides without asking questions. I told Lena I was not trying to control her life. I said she could live wherever she wanted. I said she could make any choices she wanted. I said the only thing I controlled was my own home. I said those were different things. Lena said she wished everyone could just be flexible. I told her flexibility is not the same as surrender. I said that softly because I did not want to sound like I was lecturing her. After that call, I stopped having long conversations by phone. I kept messages short and clear. If Lena asked to talk, I suggested we meet in a public place. If Bryce sent a message, I replied with simple sentences. I thanked him for letting me know. I said I would consider it. I said I was not available. I did not argue. I did not explain. I did not offer openings. Priya had told me something important during our second call. She said people like Bryce feed on emotion. She said the moment I tried to defend my character, I would be trapped in endless debate. She said the best approach was to protect the facts and keep my behavior steady. She said systems respect clarity, not drama, so I focused on clarity. One afternoon, I went to the hardware store after work. I walked the aisles slowly, like I was shopping for normal home maintenance. In a way, I was. I picked up new door hardware, a better outdoor light, and a small camera system that could cover my porch and driveway. Nothing fancy, just enough to remove doubt later if someone tried to twist a story. I also bought a folder organizer and a stack of labels. Some people might find that excessive. I found it calming. When life gets messy, I clean it with structure. At home, I installed the outdoor light first. I took my time. I did not rush. I made sure it was solid. Then I set up the cameras in a simple way that did not draw attention. I placed one near the front porch and one facing the driveway. The goal was not to spy on anyone. The goal was to have a clean record if someone tried to enter or place property without permission. I also checked every lock in the house. Not because I feared a break-in, but because I wanted to remove opportunities for accidents. If Bryce had a key, even once, he would treat it like permission. If Ron and Gail ever held a spare key, they would see it as proof that the home was shared. I did not want any confusion. The next day, I called a locksmith, Omar Reyes, and asked for an appointment. I did not tell him a dramatic story. I simply said I wanted new locks and a clear key policy. Omar arrived on time, did his work professionally, and handed me the keys in a small envelope. He explained how many copies existed and what type they were. I appreciated that detail. It meant there would be no questions later. When he left, my home felt the same, but safer in a quiet way. Not safer from danger, safer from people who treated boundaries like suggestions. A few days later, I visited the Community Management Office. Some people call it the HOA office. It is a plain building with beige walls and a front desk that smells like paper and coffee. I did not go in there angry. I went in like a homeowner who wanted to understand rules. I asked simple questions about occupancy limits, guest stays, and what counts as residency. I asked what happens if someone claims they live at an address without the owner's consent. I asked how complaints are handled and what kind of proof matters. The staff member answered in a careful tone, like she had heard similar questions before. She did not take sides. Hasta she just explained the process. I left with a clear idea of how the community rules could support me if needed. I did not wave papers around. I did not confront anyone with the information. I just learned what I needed to know. That same week, Bryce started acting like the porch incident was a misunderstanding that would be corrected with enough pressure. He sent a message saying his parents' housing situation was urgent and they needed a solution quickly. He said they were older and needed stability. He said it was the right thing to do. I replied that I hoped they found a good solution soon. I said my home was not available for that arrangement. I did not add emotion. I did not insult him. I did not mention the bank or the mail. I simply gave a clear boundary in writing. He answered with a longer message, saying I was making things harder than they needed to be. He said I was putting Lena in the middle. He said I should think about what kind of father I wanted to be. I read the message twice, then saved it. I did not argue with it. I did not correct it. I just filed it. Priya had been right. If I tried to defend myself, I would be trapped in a loop. If I stayed calm, his words would stand on their own. The real shift came when I noticed how Bryce spoke to other people about the situation. Mara mentioned it first. She did not come over to gossip. She saw me outside trimming a bush and walked over with a calm expression. She said she hoped I was doing all right. She said she had seen the truck the other day, and it looked tense. I told her I was fine and thanked her. I did not give details. But she added something that caught my attention. She said she had heard from another neighbor that Lena and Bryce were telling people they were moving back in to help me. She said the story going around was that I needed company and support. I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness, but I kept my voice steady. I told Mara that was not accurate. I said I did not ask for anyone to move in. I said I was handling it. Mara nodded slowly and said she believed me. She said my home had always been quiet and well kept. She said she did not think I needed rescuing. That was when I understood the next stage of Bryce's approach. If he could not force the move through speed, he would force it through image. He would paint himself as the helper and me as the stubborn man who refused support. Then, when the support arrived again, people would see it as kindness, not pressure. That night, I sat in my home office and reviewed my folder. I added notes about what Mara said and what story was spreading. I saved a screenshot of a social post Bryce had made. It was framed like a warm family update, talking about togetherness and shared homes. It did not mention my refusal. It did not mention the moving truck. It was a soft version of reality designed to make future pressure look normal. I called Priya again and told her the story was shifting into public image. She asked if I had been sending emotional texts or making loud statements. I told her no. She said that was good. She said to keep it that way. She said if the situation moved into formal territory later, calm behavior would matter. Then she asked me something simple. She asked if I had ever clearly written that Ron and Gail did not have permission to reside in my home. I told her I had written that my home was not available for that arrangement. She said that was a strong start. She told me to keep every message and avoid phone calls unless necessary. She said if I had to speak by phone, I should follow up with a short written summary like, "As we discussed, my home is not available." I followed her advice. When Lena called again, I answered, listened, and stayed gentle. Lena said Bryce was upset because his parents were staying with a friend and felt uncomfortable. She said Bryce believed I was being cold. She said Ron and Gail felt unwanted. I told Lena I did not hate them. I said I did not want harm for them. I said I simply did not accept them moving into my home. I said I was willing to meet them for lunch and talk about resources and options, but not to give them keys. Lena said she did not want lunch. She wanted the problem to disappear. I understood that. Wanting is not the same as reality. A few days later, Bryce tried a new move. He asked if he could come by and talk like adults without Lena there. He said he wanted to clear the air. He said he wanted to solve it. I said I was not available for a private talk at my home. I said if he wanted to talk, we could meet at a coffee shop. I kept it neutral. Bryce replied that public places were unnecessary and made things look serious. I did not respond right away. Then I replied that clear conversations deserve clear settings. I said that was my choice. He did not agree. He did not show up at a coffee shop. Instead, he escalated in a way that looked friendly to outsiders. A message arrived in the family group chat. It was from Gail. She said she wanted to do a welcome dinner at my home to reset and bring peace. She said food and family could heal tension. Ron added a short message saying it was time to move forward and stop making things awkward. Bryce added a smile symbol and said it would be good for everyone. Lena did not write much. She only said she hoped it would help. I stared at my phone for a long moment. A welcome dinner was not a dinner. It was a stage. It was a way to bring witnesses into my house, fill it with voices, and make refusal feel cruel. I did not reply immediately. I took a screenshot and saved it. Then I walked into my kitchen and looked around, imagining it full of people who believed they were already entitled to the space. I pictured Ron sitting at my table like he owned it. I pictured Gail rearranging my cabinets with a polite smile. I pictured Bryce speaking for me, telling people I had agreed. I felt the old urge to keep peace by giving in a little. That urge had shaped my life for years. It was the same urge that kept my home calm after my marriage ended. It was the same urge that helped me raise Lena without filling the house with shouting. But I could see now that giving in a little would not lead to peace. It would lead to more demands. So I did what I had been doing all week. I stayed calm. I stayed precise. I saved the message. I updated my notes. I kept my house quiet, my face steady, and my boundary clear. The welcome dinner sat in the group chat like a polite trap. It was written with soft words, but the shape of it was hard. If I said yes, they would treat it as permission. If I said no, they would treat it as proof that I was cold. Either way, Bryce would frame it as my problem. I did not answer right away. I went about my day and let the message sit. Then I replied with a short line. I said I understood they wanted peace, and I said I would host a simple dinner at my home on one condition. I said it would be a dinner only, not a moving day, and not a planned meeting with boxes and trucks. I kept the message calm and clean. Bryce answered fast. He said I was overthinking it. He said no one planned anything dramatic. He said it was just food. Ron added that he was glad I was finally being reasonable. Gail added that she would bring a dish and that she knew everyone would feel better once we were all together. I saved the messages and took a screenshot like I had been doing. I did not respond to the extra comments. I learned that the less I explained, the less room Bryce had to twist my words. The next morning, I met Priya at her office. I did not go in like a man seeking comfort. I went in like a homeowner protecting a boundary. The waiting area smelled like clean paper and coffee. There were neat chairs, a small table with brochures, and a quiet hum from an office printer behind a door. Priya asked me to walk through the facts again, step by step. I told her about the moving truck, the mail, the bank inquiry, and the shifting public story. I told her about the welcome dinner. I told her I wanted this handled properly through the systems they claimed to respect. Priya listened without reacting. Then she said something simple. She said people like Bryce rely on confusion. She said if the moment becomes emotional, he will win the room with tone and performance. She said if the moment becomes clear and procedural, the room will go quiet. She told me she would prepare what I needed in a clean and legal way. She did not speak like this was a dramatic battle. She spoke like it was routine boundary work. That steadiness helped me stay steady too. Before I left, she handed me a plain envelope. It was sealed. She told me to keep it sealed and to bring it to the dinner. She told me not to discuss it by text. She told me not to give anyone a preview. She told me to let it do its job when the moment was right. I put the envelope into my bag and nodded. I did not ask her to repeat anything. I did not need to. I understood the purpose without needing details in public. After that, I stopped at the bank again. Not to argue, not to complain, but to confirm that the notes on my file were still in place. I asked the same calm questions as last time. The staff recognized me and treated me with quiet professionalism. The supervisor told me everything was flagged as requested. I thanked her and left. On my way home, I went to the grocery store. I bought simple food, nothing fancy, chicken, vegetables, rice, bread. I bought sparkling water and tea. The goal was not to impress anyone. The goal was to remove excuses. If anyone later claimed I was unwelcoming, the table would say otherwise. When I got home, I cleaned my kitchen with extra care. I wiped counters, checked plates, and laid out utensils like I was preparing for a normal family gathering. My hands moved steadily, and my mind stayed quiet. Planning does not always look like planning. Sometimes it looks like a man calmly setting the table. I also moved a few things out of the guest room and into my home office. Not because I feared theft, but because I did not want people wandering through my home looking for leverage. The more closed doors there were, the fewer opportunities Bryce had to build a story about what he saw. That evening, Lena came over alone. She parked in the driveway and walked up the porch slowly, like the porch had changed. When I opened the door, she looked tired. Her eyes had that look I remembered from her teenage years, when she wanted peace but did not know how to ask for it without feeling disloyal. I let her in and offered tea. She said she did not want tea. She said she wanted to talk before the dinner. We sat at the kitchen table. She held her hands together tightly. She said Bryce was under pressure. She said his parents were upset and embarrassed. She said everyone wanted this to end. She said the dinner was supposed to fix it. I told her I wanted it to end too. I told her I was willing to share a meal and speak calmly. I told her I was not willing to surrender my home to group pressure. I told her those were different things. She said Bryce believed I was trying to punish him. She said he felt like I was treating him like an outsider. She said he kept saying family should not need permission. I told Lena that permission is not an insult. I told her it is how adults show respect. I told her my home was not a public space. I told her it was my responsibility, and if something went wrong, the consequences would fall on me, not on Bryce. Lena's eyes watered. She said she felt caught. She said she wanted her husband and her father to stop pulling her in opposite directions. I told her I was not pulling her. I told her I was holding a line around my own life. I told her she could live with Bryce, she could visit, she could build her future. I told her she could do all of that without turning my home into a prize. She asked me not to embarrass Bryce in front of his parents. She asked it carefully, like she was stepping around something sharp. I took a breath and kept my voice calm. I told her I had no plan to embarrass anyone. I told her I would handle things properly, through the systems adults respect. I told her I would be polite. I told her I would be firm. I told her those could exist together. She searched my face like she was trying to see what I was hiding. I did not show her anything. I did not threaten. I did not give hints. I simply stayed steady. Before she left, she hugged me. It was a tight hug, not a relaxed one. She whispered that she loved me. I told her I loved her too. When she walked out, I watched her car back out of my driveway and disappear down the street. I felt a heavy sadness, but it did not change my decision. The day of the dinner, I woke up early and moved through the house like it was a normal day. I showered, dressed simply, and made coffee. I checked the porch and the driveway. The cameras were working, the new light was steady, everything looked ordinary. I laid out extra chairs at the table. I set out plates and napkins. I placed a small vase of flowers in the center, not for them, but for the room. A calm room can hold a tense conversation better than a messy one. In my home office, I opened a drawer and looked at the sealed envelope from Priya. I did not open it. I simply confirmed it was there, then placed it into a plain folder. On the front of the folder, I wrote one word with a clean pen stroke. Welcome. The word looked almost funny on such a plain folder. It looked like a greeting. It looked harmless. That was the point. Around noon, my phone buzzed with short messages. Gail said they were on their way. Ron said traffic was light. Bryce sent a message saying he appreciated me coming around. I did not answer. I saved the message. At 2, I heard cars pulling up. First Lena's car, then Bryce's. Ron and Gail arrived a few minutes later. I watched from the window for a moment before opening the door. I noticed something that tightened my chest. One of Bryce's cousins was standing near the curb with a phone already in hand, angling it toward my porch like he expected a moment worth recording. It could have been innocent. It could have been a habit. But I knew Bryce too well now. Bryce liked proof, especially proof that supported his version of events. I opened the door and greeted them calmly. I welcomed them inside, offered water, and told them dinner would be ready soon. Gail smiled brightly and stepped in like she was already comfortable. Ron nodded at my living room as if he was approving its condition. Lena stayed close to Bryce, her shoulders tight. Bryce walked in last. He looked around, took in the table, the extra chairs, the clean counters. He smiled with that same confident ease. He said he was glad I was doing the right thing. He said we could all move forward now. I nodded and told him I wanted everyone to eat first, then talk calmly. He agreed quickly, like he thought he had already won. Ron said he respected a man who finally chose family. Gail said she knew this would be better for everyone. As I carried dishes to the table, I kept my tone polite. I asked about their week. I asked about the weather. I let them speak. I did not correct their story. I did not argue with their assumptions. I let them relax into their confidence. Then, through the front window, I saw a shape that did not belong on my street. A moving truck turned slowly onto the block, the same kind of truck as before, large and heavy, moving like it had a destination. It rolled closer, past the neighbor's mailbox, past Mara's yard, and toward my house. I did not react with panic. I did not raise my voice. I simply set down the serving spoon, wiped my hands on a towel, and looked at the folder resting on the corner of my desk in the home office. I picked it up, held it under my arm, and walked calmly toward the front door. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch with the folder under my arm. The moving truck rolled to a stop at the curb like it had done this before. 2 movers climbed down and waited for someone to point. Bryce's face lit up. He said this was perfect timing. He said we could load a few things now and keep the rest simple later. Ron nodded and said it was good to see progress. Gail smiled, but her eyes were fixed on my doorway. Lena froze in the dining room entrance. She looked at the truck, then at me, like she was trying to understand which version of the day was real. I walked down the steps and stopped on the path where everyone could see me. My voice stayed even. I told the movers they were at the wrong address for move-in. I said no one had permission to bring items into my home today. One of the movers asked who was in charge of the job. Bryce stepped forward and said he was. He said it was a family situation and it was already handled. I nodded once and said I understood. Then I lifted the folder slightly and told Bryce I had prepared a welcome note, just like they wanted. I said it would clear things up quickly. I handed the folder to Gail first because she had been the one who wrote "Welcome Dinner" in the group chat. She accepted it with a polite smile, like she expected a soft letter. Ron leaned in to look over her shoulder. Bryce stood close, still wearing that calm confidence. Gail opened the folder and started reading. Her smile faded in a slow, careful way. Ron's eyebrows lifted, then pulled together. Bryce's posture changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. His shoulders stiffened. His breath got shorter. Ron asked what this was. He said it looked formal. I told him it was formal. I said I wanted the day to be peaceful, so I had asked for professional help to write clear boundaries. I said the note was not an argument. I said it was a record. Gail kept reading. Her fingers tightened on the pages. She asked if I was serious about it. She said this was too much for family. I told her family is exactly where clarity matters. I said confusion is what breaks relationships, not boundaries. Bryce reached for the folder like he wanted to control it. Gail did not hand it over right away. That surprised him. He asked me why I was doing this in front of everyone. He said I could have talked to him privately. I told him I had tried to talk privately. I reminded him that he brought a truck to my street twice without my consent. I said the only reason we were standing here was because he kept trying to turn pressure into permission. Ron pointed at the top page and said the words sounded like a warning. He asked if I was threatening them. I told him no. I said it was a notice, not a threat. I said it stated 3 simple facts. First, I said my home is mine and I am the only person who can approve residency there. Second, I said Ron and Gail were not approved residents, and any stay beyond a short visit would not be allowed. Third, I said any attempt to use mail, deliveries, or move-in actions to create a false impression of residency would be disputed immediately through the proper channels. Bryce tried to smile again. He said no one was creating anything false. He said they just needed time. I turned my head slightly toward the movers. I told them I respected their work, and I did not want them pulled into a family conflict. I said the folder included a short written statement for them, too, explaining they had no authorization from the homeowner to unload. I said I would not ask them to judge anyone. I said I only needed them to follow the correct instruction. The mover read the page I offered him. He nodded once and said he could not unload without clear authorization from the property owner. He said it was their policy. He said he needed a signature that matched the homeowner name on the job record, or the truck would leave. Bryce's eyes flicked toward the mover, then back to me. He asked how I knew about their policy. I told him I asked before today. I said I like things clear. Gail looked up, eyes wide now, and asked what else was in the folder. I told her it included printed screenshots of the group chat and messages where the move was described as already agreed. I said it included a short log of dates, including the first truck visit, and the new names arriving in my mailbox. I said it also included a page of community occupancy rules and a note that I had verified them at the office. Ron's face went pale. He asked if this could cause them trouble. I told him it only causes trouble if someone ignores it. I said the clean path was simple. I said the truck leaves today. I said we finish dinner as planned. I said after dinner, if Bryce and Lena want to talk about their own housing plan, I will listen. I said Ron and Gail's housing plan is not my house. Lena stepped onto the porch behind me. Her voice shook as she said she did not know there was a truck coming. She said she thought it was only dinner. I looked at her and told her I believed she did not arrange the truck. I told her I was sorry she was put in the middle. I told her I would not punish her for someone else's choices. But I said I would not bend my boundary to make someone else comfortable. Bryce said I was making him look bad. He said I was doing this to win. I shook my head once and told him I was doing this to end the pattern. I said, my home is not a prize. I said, it is not a test. I said, it is not a stage. The mover asked again, calmly, if he should close the truck. Ron looked at Gale. Gale looked at Bryce. Bryce stared at the folder like it had changed the air around him. Then Bryce exhaled sharply and told the mover to close it. He said they would reschedule. His voice was flatter now. Ron did not argue. Gale did not smile. They walked back toward the cab without looking at my front door again. I stood on the porch and watched the truck pull away. When it turned the corner and disappeared, I looked down at Bryce. He was still holding my welcome note, but his hands were not steady anymore.